The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, Mr. AJ Applegarth. What's up, man?
Not much. Just chilling.
Yeah. So, I guess we gotta send out a little early happy birthday to you, man. Birthday is tomorrow. That's why we are doing this show on a Wednesday.
Yep.
So
I plan to be asleep early tomorrow, so gotta rest up. And yes.
You got big plans or nah? I mean,
no,
40 version 2?
Yeah.
Version 1? I don't know how to really say that. You know what I mean, though.
Yes, the second 365 of
the 40.1 version of AJ is going to be tomorrow. For those of you who follow and can follow computer upgrade terms there, you know what I mean? So, nerd alert. Yeah. Me. Yeah, what can I say? Anyway, yeah, so we got that going on. And, yeah, tonight, though, we're going to be talking about some Dynasty Football Player Values. A lot of things have changed over the course of this past season, and just kind of want to, trades are going to be able to be happening. Some waiver pickups can still be happening. And not that a lot of the guys we're going to be talking about are on waivers, but trades can happen and things like that. So, want to get the pulse on that for you all and get you ready for the next season and this off season here. But before we get into things, just want to remind everybody, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're listening, wherever you're following, and also leave us those reviews on iTunes and Spotify. We appreciate all of you for listening. Yeah. Let's jump into things here, man. Let's bring in our guest first, and it is Mr. Ryan Kirksey. Sorry, I pressed the button for you too fast there, LaPlante. Yeah, so Ryan is a writer for Fantasy Six Pack. He also dabbles in some number fire, fan tracks, Razzball. He's everywhere, man. You are literally everywhere. You are a busy man. So happy to have you on the show. You do some Dynasty content for us, so wanted to bring you on for this show, and glad to have you here. How's it going tonight, man?
Pretty good. I'm super pumped to talk Dynasty tonight. The season never stops, really, when you're thinking about that aspect.
Absolutely.
Of it. So
True.
happy to be here, and happy birthday to AJ.
Thanks, sir.
All right. So we can't continue on the show until we do our favorite segment, and that is Beer of the Week.
Beer.
All right, Ryan. I know you're not drinking tonight, but you have some representation you want to shout out here.
Yeah, I just want to represent the Houston Ailers, Eighth Wonder Brewery here in Houston, reminiscent of my glory days of the Houston Oilers.
Nice.
Nice. That's a good name. I like it. AJ, what you got, man?
Well, since we're apparently supposed to get hit with another winter storm.
My kid's already on 2-hour delay tomorrow.
Yep. Mine
Yippee.
too. I'm drinking the New Belgium Accumulation Winter Hazy IPA. Little lighter tonight, 6.5. So figure I'm getting old. Can't keep up with these triples anymore, and that's totally.
You'll be back. You'll be back next
totally
week.
A lie. Yeah,
you'll be back next week.
Absolutely not true at all. But yeah, just I don't know. I actually don't have a lot of selection for once. I don't know what's going on.
What?
Dwindling in the fridge. Need to fix that.
Losing it at your old age, man. Jeez.
Yeah. It's true.
All right, so I am drinking one that I drank on Saturday night when we were doing our fantasy baseball draft prep show, and I picked this one because I think the can is fantastic. I'm gonna have to drink a little bit of it first so I don't tip it over. Hang on. Yes, it's very, very full. It's a True Respite Triple Hazy IPA, 10%er, so it's a good one. But it is called Picture Day, and the can is awesome. And Ryan, I'm sure you can appreciate this. Picture Day.
Nice, yeah.
Who didn't remember from our generation having these backgrounds on our school pictures?
Oh my god!
So yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I saw this can and I didn't even realize it was a triple when I picked it up. I was like, that can's awesome, and I was like, oh, so's the beer. Gave it a 4 out of 5 on Untapped. So very, very generous.
Also reminds me of my mom's glamour shots that we had in the house back in the day.
Right? I mean, that laser background was everywhere. It was like futuristic, man. Like this. Cool. That's awesome.
That's one of the best scenes of Napoleon Dynamite, or Uncle Rico's getting his shots.
Oh my gosh. All right, so let's jump into things here. And again, we're talking some Dynasty player values. And what we're going to start with here is some guys who their arrow is pointing down, in my opinion. And for, this isn't a shocker with a lot of these guys. And we'll start with number 1 here, and it is Mr. Allen Robinson. I mean, just a brutal season all around, man. Just never got it going. Got COVID as well. The Bears offense was just miserable. And so hopefully, I'm hoping we see better of him in the future, but there's a lot of questions about this guy moving forward. Like, is he washed somehow, like all of a sudden? Ryan, what's your thoughts on him moving forward?
Yeah, the funny thing about Allen Robinson is I don't know that we've ever seen his ceiling. Right, he has just been saddled with awful quarterbacks for this is his 7th, 8th year in the league. He's a free agent now, right? So we don't actually know what's going to be his situation going into next year. But I was going back and looking at his numbers. I mean, I forgot just how bad it was. 38 total catches. In 12 games. Darnell Mooney more than doubled him up in targets this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just simply awful. I mean, it's hard to make a judgment not knowing where he will be, other than the fact that the production is declining. He's going to be 29. And unless we just put him with an elite quarterback, I don't see any reason why the stock isn't going anywhere but down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as bad as this year, but yeah. I'm not jumping out to get him now. If somebody wants to give him to me for like a 3rd-round pick, I might jump at that.
I mean,
but I do think like he was one of those guys. Sorry, AJ. He was one of those guys where like we always called him quarterback proof, right? Because as you said, he had such terrible quarterback play in the past. That proved to be the complete opposite this year. And the question I always had here was with him this whole season was how unmotivated was he to play this year for the Bears on the tag, and he didn't want to be there. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So maybe if he does land with a much better quarterback, then maybe we see something from him. But yeah, I mean, if he lands in another meh spot, I'll pass on him, especially in Dynasty.
Yeah, and if somebody offers you a 3rd-round pick for him, let me know who that person is so I can join the
I just threw it out there. I'm sure I'm sure there's going to be some crazy stuff.
Yeah, he was taken in the 3rd round this year. I mean, him and Terry McLaurin, that was the off-season debate. Which of these guys do you want in the middle of the 3rd round?
Yeah, and when I say 3rd-round pick, for those of you who are watching and listening, it is a 3rd-round rookie draft pick. So not as valuable as an actual 3rd-round pick. Right. So let me clarify. AJ, you said you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I was just going to point back to the number of games. So he played 12 games this year, like you said, only had 38 receptions. In 18, he had 13 games. He only had 55 receptions, but he still had 94 targets and 754 yards, 4 touchdowns compared to the 1 this year. I mean, so in 1 game more 3 years ago, it's like,
how crazy is it?
340 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, even in 2014, he played 10 games, in his rookie year. Still at 548, 81 targets. I think that, he's definitely has to go up from here. But yeah, I agree with both of you guys. It depends on this quarterback situation that he gets into. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't hate to see him come to Philly just to see what he could do, because he has to be better than Jalen Reagor. I would take the 38 for 38 out of 66, 410 yards over Reagor just not knowing what the hell is going on. So yeah, next guy we got here. I mean, I gotta give a shout out to my boy here. # suck it Keith, Mr. Kenny Gallaudet.
Always got to put it in there.
Roll that banner. There it is. I mean, Golladay used to be, a no-brainer stud for the Lions, and now he's just, he goes to New York, and no thanks. Like, I don't want to touch this guy. I mean, what are your thoughts on Golladay, Kirks?
Yeah, I mean, when I went back and looked at his numbers, so I expected when I revisited him to say, well, he played about 7 or 8 games. He maybe had around 500 yards.
Yeah.
He had 500 yards and 37 receptions, but I forgot that he played 14 games. I mean, and in 2 more games than Robinson, he had fewer receptions and 0 touchdowns. So, I mean, and this guy, he often was there when New York literally had no other wide receivers that they could, count on as NFL caliber players. And I mean, part of that certainly at the end of the season was the quarterback play. But I mean, this is another guy that you took him out of a bit above average passing situation in Detroit. And now, I mean, who the hell knows with quarterback situation in New York? I guess they're going to stick with Daniel Jones, but that doesn't instill any confidence on, for me, for Golladay moving forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not good.
You're going to see, if Jones does stay there, you're just going to see him tuck and run and fumble 80 yards down the field every other play when he should be throwing the ball. But, I see a lot of similarities here between Golladay and Robinson. Actually, it's like they had that one major blow-up season in the end zone, and Galladay's was at 19, where he finally played all 16 games, and he had 11 touchdowns, almost 200 or 1,200 yards. He was still good in 15 too, but he just, we don't typically try to rely on touchdowns here because we know that you never can. So for him to get none at all with an offense that had so many injury issues and whatever, I mean, it's astounding to me. I just don't understand how he was not a red zone target for them. And even if he was, who was throwing it to him, or where did it go, and how far into the first few rows of the stands did a drunk guy catch it instead? I mean, I don't know. Joe,
Yeah,
looks like we got a
Golladay is Hey, I'll get to you, Bob Dole. Hang on. It's our
Bob
one of our fan listeners here. Appreciate you, man. Ganny Gallaudet, 2 years ago, after coming off that season with 11 touchdowns, everybody was like, "Oh man, he's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver." And man, AJ, you and I did that contract league. Remember that? And we took him as one of those top receivers. And thankfully that whole league was run so horribly, we bailed. It wasn't because of our team. Our team's actually halfway decent. Outside of Golladay. we left whoever took it over with a pretty nice lineup, but the league was run horribly. But like I'm just glad I don't have to deal with Golladay and the contract that we probably left him with. So yeah, I feel bad for you there a little bit. But yeah, man, like I don't know, like I don't really know what to think of him. I still think he is a talented guy, but he's also gonna be in his 29th year next season too. So he's another older receiver at this point, and without a good quarterback, I'm just not really buying in on him anymore. It's unfortunate, but So Bob's got a question here. Any thoughts on Jimmy G talk on going to Seattle, Russell Wilson going to Denver, and I don't know. I mean, it's all talk at this point. We have no idea. I don't know if I've heard about the Jimmy G to Seattle. I've heard Russell Wilson moving anywhere at this point, but
yeah.
I haven't heard Jimmy G going to Seattle. I also haven't been following a lot of the trade talk at this point and rumors and stuff. But I mean, if Jimmy G goes to Seattle, I mean, I don't know. I think he's a very efficient quarterback. I don't think he's a game-breaking quarterback at this point. So he fits in the Shanahan offense really, really well.
I think Jimmy is doing exactly what Shanahan wants him to do, and it's true. He's a placeholder there until they think Lance is ready. If that were to happen, I've not heard anything about Garoppolo. I mean, he's still playing clearly, so he's better not be talking to other teams. But if he were to end up with,
that'd be kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think I would probably consider that a downgrade for guys like Metcalf and Lockett.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Wilson going to Denver. I mean that's fine. I think any solid quarterback going to Denver is going to help that entire offense. Anybody is better than who they have. Almost anybody at this point is better than who they have. So, yeah, if Russ goes there, I'd still buy in on him, and I'd be pumping up Jeudy and Sutton and Fant and everybody there on that offense because that offense would be tremendously better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just as a quick aside, you're exactly right. If you at all believe that Denver's going to upgrade their quarterback situation this offseason, then grabbing Sutton, Jeudy, Fant before that happens, I mean, the price is going to shoot up once they have a better quarterback.
Totally. All right, next one here is a pair of running backs, and actually we got a trio of running backs here, so I'm just going to mention them together. We got Aaron Jones a little down because, A.J. Dillon's kind of taken a lot of work, and the touchdowns were down this year as well, though, he still finished fairly well. But a lot of that was early season. There was one game he had 4 touchdowns, kind of, inflated his total year. Ezekiel Elliot, kind of same thing. We've seen him. Injuries are starting to get down on him. I think we're going to see that O-line suffer in the offseason as well. And Pollard's been playing very, very well. Not that I think Pollard will take him over, but he's clearly involved a lot in that offense. And then Saquon Barkley is totally different. Another giant. The offense clearly is holding him back, but he also doesn't quite look the same. I watch a lot of Red Zone, but I do catch as much of the Giants as I can when they're on like the national games and when they are on Red Zone. But Barkley at the the middle part when he came back from that injury, and even in the end of the year, he actually looked slower than Gallman. There were times where Gallman would take a handoff and go, and I'm like, oh, there goes Barkley. Oh, wait, what? That's Gallman. Yeah. Like, what? And then Barkley would get the next handoff, and you're like, that's Gallman. No, crap, that's Barkley. Like, it was the opposite of what you thought. Like, the eye test kind of told you that something's off with Barkley. So, I don't know. You don't have to talk about all of them, but their stock is down. But, pick and choose where you want to talk here, man.
Yeah, let me just mention a couple. I'll start with Barkley. It's funny you saying that about Gallman. I remember towards the end of the season, or maybe the middle of the season, having those exact same thoughts about Devontae Booker, right? So that's a problem if we can't distinguish Barkley from Gallman and Booker and these guys that are just guys when they're out on the field. He does have this propensity to do nothing and then break 60 yards, do nothing and then break 60 yards. He still has that in him from time to time, but you're right. He does not look like the player that came out of Penn State at all to me. Part of that is, is the offense, which has been, at least from a scheme and coaching perspective, is going to be totally overhauled. So we'll see what happens. But he just does not look like the same guy to me. So, yeah, that's thoughts on Barkley. And then for Jones, I'm heavily invested in Jones in a lot of places. And so I went back to check here now that the season was over. And I was expecting to see a snap share that was closer than between Jones and Dillon than had been in the past. But it's like 52 Jones, 42 Dillon. I mean, it is almost 50-50 at this point. And they had tremendous success with that. So I don't see why they changed that at all.
I agree. And honestly, I mean, there were times where it's more often than not, man, like shockingly, Dillon looked better down the stretch. And so I don't know. I was always a big fan of Dillon coming out of college. I thought he was severely underrated. And, I watch a lot of the ACC, and so does AJ, because we're Virginia Tech fans. AJ Dillon just destroys people, man. He is a physical runner.
Yeah.
So I thought, 40 times and stuff like that were gonna bring his stock down, but man, the guy can ball. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think it's finally getting proven.
Oh, and I think it's here again, Green Bay going with that same strategy of getting the guy that we want, who's very good at given position. We're going to kind of let him sit back and learn and do this and that. And obviously Rodgers' situation was a little different, completely different coaching staff and whatnot. But I think that mentality is still there. And they knew what they had. And they had to see the writing on the wall with Jones because, frankly, I mean, we talked about it 2 years ago that his touchdowns weren't going to be the same. And then they were. So, great, thanks.
I bought back into him this year, and
and it's okay, well, maybe we should keep going on this guy. But I just think, I mean, it's been a strange season. I was always kind of in the belief of teams are going to have to rely on two backs way more this year with the added game and the COVID and then everything else that happened in general. And Green Bay did it well. I mean, I think Dallas did to a point too. I mean, Zeke he's got a lot of mileage on him now, I feel like. And Pollard's shown that he can handle the workload that he's been given. He's had a few games here and there where he's had a full workload because of injury or whatever. And he's still performed. So I just think, for running back, it's always you get towards that 30-year mark and you're over the hill. But I just think it's a workload thing too. And, running backs take so much abuse. So.
And him especially. It's funny you brought up the snap count share for Jones and Dillon, and I looked up in the last half of the season, and I know Jones missed one game, but the snap share at this point is 48-44 in favor of Dillon. Here's the crazy one: the rush share percentage 65-20 Dillon. Yeah. So in the end of the season, they leaned more heavily on Dillon when it came down to number of carries. So and
I was checking red zone numbers while you were doing that, and it looks like Dillon had more red zone rushing attempts, more touchdowns in that area. Yeah, so that did skew towards the second half of the season. So they certainly started, at least from the rushing perspective, started relying on Dillon more. Dillon still outpaced him in the passing game, but Dillon, certainly was the lead rusher towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was just going to say too. Jones, a lot of his success that he's had over the past few years before this year, he was so heavily involved in the pass game, and he was so good at it. So,
and he still was this year. He didn't have the the complete domination of the running
exactly
game that he had in years past.
Well, and I think that's what they're looking at. They see that he's been successful in both, but they gotta get the ball rolling with Dylan here and let him take some of the abuse because he's younger and can probably handle it a little better. Let's keep Jones out in the flat a little bit more and see what happens. I mean, it can't fault them too much. They're number one seed in the NFC, so it's
what
worked.
do you guys think about? What do you guys think the Cowboys do about Zeke's contract? I mean, it is. I mean, it's unrealistic to think that
he's like a $22 million hit, right?
Years, yeah. So they have an out after next season where it's like a $12 million, cap hit. Do you think Jones and company cut bait at that point, or they certainly can't trade him? Or
what would it be if they cut him this year? Would it be the full $22 million hit?
I think they're still going to get whacked this year if they cut him.
Yeah, it looks like if what I'm seeing here is correct, 2022 dead cap hit is $30 million.
Oh, I mean, yeah, they definitely can't do anything with him this year. I mean, you can't.
You say that, but knowing the way that Jerry Jones is and his delusional,
he won't. No, I think even he is.
He may just be like, you know what?
It is a dead cap of $30 million.
Get him off
crap.
Even though Zeke's not the problem with this team,
he's not the full problem. But dude, you're not going to be able to improve the team if you're paying one man $18 million, and if you cut him, it's $30 million. You can't do that.
I mean,
he is not a free agent until 2027.
Yeah, I gotta think they somehow talk him into restructuring his deal, being like, "Look, man, if you want, talk to him. If you want to win, you got to give us some money back, man. We got to go spend. We've got, thankfully, and I saw this on Twitter too, and I was thinking the same thing is because people were dogging Zeke, and then somebody replied in the thread. I was thinking to myself well, thankfully they've at least drafted well, especially on the defensive side, right? So they've got some of that young, cheap talent that every team needs to be able to succeed, especially when you do stupid stuff like this. This is why you don't pay running backs, guys. Sorry. Once they hit 26, just go get the next guy. I don't even care. There's very few guys that are worth this, $15, $20 million hit in running backs. We've seen it time and time again. It's just next man mentality. You just need an offensive line that's good. So
yeah.
All right, last guy here who we have for values that are down after the season is Russell Wilson. And, good friend of the show, Bob Dole, mentioned him already. But, look, he struggled, and I know some of it was injury-related. But, I mean, he's been a guy who's been sort of up and down the last couple of years, really hot the first, 6, 7, 8 games of the season, then just what happened the last 8. And then this year, it was just kind of bad all around for the most part, in my opinion. We saw the receivers take a massive hit. Lockett was actually better than I thought he would be. But, DK kind of took a hit too because of it. But Russ was, he's just a guy who I'm not really sure how to evaluate him, to be honest with you, because I think he's still a talent. But is it just that, because maybe he can't scramble around as much as he used to, it's not kind of working for him, and I don't know, something seems weird with him. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, we know he missed 3 games, but really that shouldn't account for as much of a loss of production as we saw. I mean, 183 rushing yards, so that's fallen off the cliff completely. Just 25 touchdowns in those 14 games. The efficiency fell off, the completion percentage fell off. Part of it maybe is looked like, it's pretty high for him at average yards per attempt. So he was throwing the ball farther downfield, but that resulted, again, lower completion percentage, lower QBR. The sack rate is still pretty high. They can't protect him as much as they need to. So, this is entering his age 34 season. He's got the talent in the receivers, and we think that he will be surrounded by more rushing talent, whether it's Penny or others. But yeah, this just may be, the start of the decline that every quarterback in their mid-30s, unless you're Tom Brady, starts to see.
Yeah, it's tough to just like throw him into mediocre, like back in QB1 streamer land, but I kind of think that's where he is at this point. He'll come back next year and throw for 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns and prove it's all wrong. But some part of me in the back of my mind thinks he came back a little too early from that thumb injury. It was a thumb injury, right? And because man, watching some of those games, I mean, he was missing guys that were standing like this, throw me the ball, and it was like, whew. It was like, what? I mean, they were not on target at all, and you're like, I'm just thinking like only somebody who's hurt, especially at that level, is going to miss a guy that wide open. And he was doing it over and over and over again. It finally took him, until he came back in week 10. His first, 2 or 3 games were, first 2 games were bad, and then it finally started, coming back, but it still wasn't to the level we expected from him. And it wasn't until the very end of the season where it was like, oh, okay, all right, maybe he's back, but it was too late by that point.
Yeah, it looks like towards the end of the season, to your point, last 3 games of the year, they rushed the ball at the 4th highest rate in the league. I mean, they were just basically taking the ball out of his hands. Only, San Francisco, New Orleans, teams that want to utilize just every rushing aspect of their attack were the only ones ahead of him. So
I'll be honest, he's always been sort of one of those I feed off the run game player, and he's been very efficient in his career, as you said, and so I think if they want to keep him, and they probably should. I don't know who the hell they would get unless they're just trying to do rebuild, but I mean a DK and them are going to be pissed. If they want to go full rebuild, then fine, but if they want to keep him, I think they've got to build up that O-line. For sure, they've got to protect him at this point. They can't let him get sacked, 40 times a year like he's been over the span of his career. And they've got to get, as much as I love me some Chris Carson, they've got to get a guy who can stay healthy. Yeah. And that's all there is to it. They can't go into the season relying on Chris Carson and Penny, who notoriously miss half a year, if not more, every season. It feels like so. Yeah,
and they got to fix the defense too. They allow the second most passing yards per game.
That is true. That is true.
Fix that secondary.
Yeah, I mean the secondary used to be ridiculously shut down, and now they're just ridiculously Swiss cheese.
They lost Cam Chancellor, man.
So,
Go Hokies.
Exactly. But I mean, looking at Wilson's stats this year, they're like, aside from the passing yards being the worst of his career, I mean the 25 touchdowns still isn't his worst, but it's close. He only had 6 interceptions. That's not horrible, especially in a 17-game season. I mean, he played 14, but it's still on par with what he had done, and his sack rate was down. I mean, it was tied for the lowest in his career at 33 since his rookie season. Now the big thing here too, like we said, was his rushing yards. I mean, they're non-existent now. So that, I think, taking that away from him and making him so much more of a one-sided quarterback does hurt his overall value. I'm interested to see what he wants to do with this exploring my options thing, and see if it's going to pan out the same way that all the rumors is when he was on draft day. Oh, well, draft me your team, I'll win you a Super Bowl, or whatever he called every head coach or GM or whatever it was. I still like Wilson, but I have a hard time buying into him, especially in Dynasty. as a starting option week to week to week.
So I got one more, and I just want to give me a quick buy, sell, hold, and maybe 15 seconds as to why. Jeudy.
Hold, because the value is just non-existent without a quarterback. So I'm going to hold, hoping that they get somebody else besides Bridgewater or Locke back there.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, all right, I wanna jump into some guys here who their values are up, I guess. I guess I should say here, and
the needle is pointing northward.
Start here with a guy who, coming into the season, not many thought would be that way, and it is Mr. Elijah Mitchell, San Francisco 49ers running back who, I mean, this guy took every opportunity he could, and when he was on the field, he dominated, man. I took this guy, and I shout out to Jeff Lambert every time for when I mentioned his name, and he said his name on this show and in the draft season, and I took him in the back end of Scott Fish, in the back end of my rookie draft in my Dynasty League, and reaped the benefits there. So Elijah Mitchell, like, are you willing to sell him high knowing it's the Niners and, like, it's just going to be somebody else next year?
Yeah.
Or do you think this guy's legit? Like, he will be the guy now?
I believe in the scheme, certainly, and how they play. But yeah, I mean, 6 months ago, we would have thought we'd be sitting here talking about Trey Sherman.
Right.
And I'm not sure that guy saw a snap on the offense this year. Right. So
wasn't very many if he did.
Yeah. We can't really put 100% of our trust in the fact that they're just going to roll with Mitchell going forward. But my God, if you can't put your faith in that guy after what he showed, again, rushing all over the field. The Deebo Samuel thing is a problem because they're going to use him in that role sort of as a 1B running back. But yeah, I'm very high going next year on Mitchell, knowing that the scheme's likely going to remain the same. The only thing that worries me is, besides Samuel, would be, does Trey Lance take over, and how much do they involve him in the running game?
Yeah, it is hard to project what's going on. My thing with Mitchell is, like, I'm a big, like, if I have him in Dynasty, and I do, I'm holding him. Yeah. But if somebody wants to give me, like, a solid player and, like, a first, or, like, maybe even just, like, an early first, like, I know I can get, like, a locked up guy who is, we think those early first round picks are going to be, locked in studs, then sure, because there are so many question marks still surrounding Mitchell, but there could be a lot of people out there that are just going to be like, no, there's no way they move away from this guy. But we've seen it every year with the 49ers. They do it. And a lot of times it's injury related. Like, they have to move on and find the next guy. But the scheme proves, as you said, that they can just go find the next guy. So,
yeah.
But he's super cheap. He's like he was a 4th or 5th round pick? Maybe it was 6th, actually. What year was he?
Yeah,
6th round, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dirt cheap. So they can, like, get rid of everybody else and just keep him for nothing, and just they know their scheme fits anybody at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we already mentioned it, though, with Deebo. He's another guy that we have on this list here that we need to group together because obviously same team. And obviously Deebo was a huge factor in the running game this year. I mean, he's never eclipsed 15, gotten to 15 attempts rushing in his first 2 years. 59 attempts this year. His 6.2 yard per average is pretty solid. 365. He did have, some fumble issues, but he only lost 2 of the 4. But he had 8 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's huge compared to what he had seen touchdowns in his first 2 years. Obviously, he was injured in 2020.
His yards after the catch, by the way, when he was receiving, is astronomically good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Over 10, I think. Over 10 yards after catch.
Yeah. I can't find on the site that I'm looking at where it is, but it's enormously good.
I mean, if you're averaging almost a touchdown a game, that's huge for Dynasty. He's 26. He's a freaky good athlete. He's someone I absolutely will be targeting next year. Or even in Dynasty trying to trade for. I'll probably have to give up a lot more than I would want to after this season. Last year was definitely the time to trade for him.
Everybody was on Ayuk, who wasn't bad once he played again. That was nonsense. But yeah.
You know what? I did not realize Mostert, Wilson, and Hasty are all free agents going into next year.
Yeah.
So I mean that, but on the wide receiver side, the free agents for San Francisco: Sanu, Jennings, James, Sherfield. So the A team is all coming back, right? So it's we don't have to worry about these superfluous guys.
I like Jennings, by the way.
Yeah,
he's solid. They should keep him. He shouldn't be expensive. He was good down the stretch.
Yeah. But I guess to your point about question marks for San Francisco, we can't just count on not avoided targets, but targets that become available or targets that are rushing opportunity that's all of a sudden opens up. The main guys are all coming back.
Yeah, they are. They will draft one or two running backs. It's just inevitable. Yeah. I don't know. For me, for Deebo, like I'm with you, AJ, man. Like I think he's a huge target. I think he's somebody that you want to go get, but I think the price tag for him might be a bit too high to go get. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to have a hell of a team that Deebo is going to be like the one last guy to give up almost, all your draft picks to go get him. Ryan, prove me wrong.
No, I can't. I can't argue with that. This is, again, too much production. The perfect scheme. You can't just say much more than that. He's in the perfect scheme for what his skill set is.
Yeah, put it this way: he had the 5th most receiving yards on 77 receptions. Like most guys around him, outside of Jamar Chase, by the way, 81 for 1455, right about the same range. Everybody else is like over 100 around him when you talk about that many yards. It's just crazy what he did with the ball.
Here's the crazy thing I see about it. So Deebo was about 70 yards behind Cooper Kupp in yards after the catch this year.
Mm-hmm.
70 yards on the season. He was 70 receptions behind Cooper
right
on the season. So it's just ridiculous what he can do once he gets the ball in the open field.
And so that would be, to me, a reason why the more I think about it, I don't want to go after Deebo at this price tag, because you can't look. I don't think anybody can expect the volume that a Cooper Kupp got, right? Again, that's just not going to happen. Like, there was a lot of things that went right for him this year. Stafford loves him. We know that. We know he will be probably an elite receiver again next season, but that volume won't be there. So I'm not paying for Cooper Kupp either, right? I'm not paying for Deebo because the volume and the production doesn't match. And we see that a lot, right? We saw it with A.J. Brown. We saw it with DK Metcalf. The volume that those guys received last year and the production they got out of it, especially touchdowns, doesn't match. Now, Deebo gets helped out because he's got the rushing that they're going to mix in if they do it again next year, right? You never know. Like, that's the other thing. That's a big wild card. I've never seen the 49ers do that, where they're just like, oh, here, Deebo, this receiver, here, take the ball. They did it for that first week when Elijah Mitchell and like they had no running backs, and they were like they were just like, here, Deebo, you're big, go run, you're athletic, go run, and they were like, oh crap, this works, and so they just kept doing it.
All he needed to do was get past the line, and then it's like okay, it's like he just
it's like a punt return,
like he just caught a screen pass, and now he's going to take it 40 yards.
I mean, and so again, it worked. But again, will they do it again next year to try to keep this guy healthy? Because as we've seen in his career, like he hasn't been the healthiest guy. So like, do they want to continue to keep that workload on him, type of thing? That's where I'm always with him. On that thinking with that, and it's just kind of like there's a lot of wild cards with him. His value is, all off the charts high right now. Yeah. So I'm sort of off buying him. If I have him, I am asking for the moon. But I'm not selling him. But it's
for one of these other sites you mentioned of much lower quality than ours. I actually wrote up Deebo as my negative regression candidate going into
absolutely, man.
I mean, 10 yards after the catch is just simply unsustainable. We just don't see that. The rushing.
I would love to know how many other people have actually done that and returned that value again the next year, because it just.
Everything would just have to align exactly as it did this year again next year for him to be able to duplicate.
And again, here's another wild card to throw into the 49ers, and something we thought would hit harder this year because we didn't think they would be as good is Trey Lance. Yeah. Right? So say they don't play as well again. They want to get the Trey Lance, right? They didn't draft him number 2 or 3 or whatever it was this past year to not play him. Now, look, Jimmy Garoppolo keeps winning in 12 games, when he's the starter, then I don't think they're going to have a choice, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So once Trey Lance gets in there, we know what happens to that offense. And Deebo had a game or two with Trey Lance that was actually pretty decent, but the rest of that offense kind of suffered. And I think overall Deebo would too. Yeah. So,
I mean, the last thing I'll say is that Trey Lance doesn't have the same I backed up the GOAT card that Jimmy G does to play. So, it's like, hey, it's like, damn, you're right. Okay, go win me 12 more games.
Yeah, right.
So,
all right. So I want to move on here to a couple running backs who had phenomenal seasons. And look, they weren't totally, they weren't totally surprising, but I think to the level of the season they had, and also because the running back position sort of suffered this year as a whole, Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler. I'm going to throw these two together because they were pretty much 1-2 all year long. What's your thoughts on these guys moving forward?
Well, I mean, what do you say about Taylor? I think he's pretty much the consensus number 1 dynasty running back. The consensus number 1 running back in redraft leagues as well, I'm sure, going into next year. And the fact that he has Carson Wentz as his quarterback, I mean, only helps that position. The fact that
I wonder if he will next year, though.
What's that?
I wonder if he will next year, though.
Yeah, well, that is true. I mean, you saw towards the end of the season. I mean, they were literally having Wentz pass 10 times a game. And only when it was absolutely.
They're trying to preserve his health.
Yeah. His 22, 12, 20, 27, 29 for Wentz as far as
played in a game that late in the season.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. That is true.
You would know, Eagles fan.
Elite offensive line, just a scheme that wants to run as much as possible. The only legitimate backup for the past year or two has been a pass-catching running back. So I mean, assuming they don't, try to put him into a timeshare, which I don't know why they would. And this is and will remain the number one choice.
Yeah. Would you be willing to go, trade for him and or an Eckler at their value now, knowing it's going to cost you an arm and a leg in a league, knowing especially Taylor, right? Because he's pretty young actually.
Yeah.
23. He's going to have some years left, and a running back, man, those are hard to find, especially in dynasty.
He's the one I would trade for. I always find it difficult to hit the accept button for running backs in dynasty leagues. I mean, certainly if I found that the price was right, yeah, I would do it. But boy, it's tough to say, okay, we had almost a record-setting year this year. I can count on that again next year. We've learned with running backs, you can almost never count on it. I mean, we would have thought that with Derrick Henry, but we've seen what happens there, and we're again a young guy, but this is it's just dangerous for me in dynasty to put all the eggs in the running back basket.
I agree, and for me, since you spoke a little bit, a lot on Taylor, Eckler is a guy who I've always liked as a talent. I think health is always going to be a question with this guy. But, he'll be 27 coming into this next season. And so people are going to, probably, go, oh, he's hitting that age. But I'll be honest, man, like he's very low usage 27. Talking 106, 132, 116, and then this year 206 attempts rushing. Now he was utilized in the passing game a lot, but 108 targets 3 years ago, 65 last year, only 10 games, and then 94 again this year on top of all the rushing. I mean, he had a total combined of 20 touchdowns, so that was amazing. I still really like him, but I would still, with a lot of these guys, I'd find it hard to accept the price tag it's going to cost to get these guys. It's just one of those, if you've got them, hold them. If you can trade them for the world, go for it. Otherwise, especially if you're not a very good team, like Eckler's the only good player on your team, sell him for everything. Someone will, I guarantee you there's somebody in every league who will buy an Eckler, and you will be set up very well for the future because you'll get multiple pieces for him. So that's the kind of thing to look for there. The last guy here that we want to talk to as far as values being up is a guy who was kind of not really drafted at all in many leagues, kind of like the first guy we mentioned with Elijah Mitchell, and it's Hunter Renfrow. I loved this kid coming out of college. Again, another ACC boy who went under the radar, kind of like A.J. Dillon. And I watched this guy play on Clemson and just dominate. Like, he's just a smart football player, man. Good slot receiver. And, yeah, a lot of things might have just gone his way this year with all the Raiders news. And I'm not going to get into it. But, look, Carr finally figured out, like, this dude can ball. Like, I'm going to give him the ball, and he's just going to make it work. And I'm happy to see this kid finally perform at this level. What is your thoughts on a Hunter Renfrow moving forward?
I'd love to see the alternate universe where Darren Waller is healthy all season, sort of what happens to Renfrow. But all those other things being equal, there was so much chaos there with the Ruggs news and all this other stuff that happened there. I think that you're right about Carr. He learned as we went through the season who he could rely on, especially who he could rely on once Waller was out.
Right.
He learned that that Renfrow was going to be that guy. And I think that you build that over the course of a season. It's not likely to go away. I'm just hesitant. Again, it's not like Waller is some, young stud tight end. He's going to be, I think, age 30 next year. So, I think Renfrow is certainly one of those that's pointing up after this connection's been established with Carr.
Yeah. AJ, I got a couple of things, but go ahead and say some words.
Quick with Renfrow. I mean, again, I agree. He was awesome in college. He came in, maybe a little undersized at 5'10", 185, but as a slot guy, that works. I mean, he's only 26. He's still got plenty of mileage to go because he really didn't get too involved those first 2 years. And
for receivers, it doesn't matter as much.
Well, exactly. I mean, and he's now at 103 receptions, over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. 9 touchdowns. that I could see regressing because of a healthier Waller.
Right.
But, I still think that he's going to be valuable. He's going to be a more of a safety valve for Carr moving forward.
Yeah. So my thing with Renfrow and something I saw and noticed very early on with him, right? And even when Waller was healthy, is that he was seeing tons of targets. I never saw a game where there were a couple of games, but there weren't very many games where he was like below 8 targets. Even early on. Now, a lot of them very early when Waller was healthy were much shorter targets than what we saw later on. But even when Waller came back, we still saw those deeper targets, and he was being utilized, in the red zone. So they were utilizing him kind of like, almost like the Patriots were utilizing like Edelman, where they would do those quick like in out to the pylon routes, right? Because he's fast and shifty like that. That's exactly what his game is.
Yeah.
And so it just, we saw his touchdowns spike at the end of the season. He scored 5 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. So he scored 9 overall, but it was very back end heavy. So I really like him moving forward. I think if somebody doesn't believe in him, I would. I think he's he's not a wide receiver 1 or maybe not even like a true wide receiver 2, but especially if he's starting 3, hands down a wide receiver 3, back end wide receiver 2, landslide flex play, even in a 2 wide receiver league, in my opinion. So I just like him as a safe, especially in a full PPR. I really do enjoy Hunter Runfro, being on a roster of mine. So let's jump in now into some guys who have been injured this year or all season. And we're going to start with the top one. And it's Mr. Christian McCaffrey, a guy who's missed the majority of the last 2 seasons. The talent is undeniable. Even when he is on the field, he is one of the best players in the league, especially for fantasy, right? At this point, though, like it's really, as somebody, I don't have him, but if I had him, I would probably be pretty bitter at this point. And maybe his price tag is lowered, and you could go get him. I don't think it's gonna be cheap still, but like, what is your feeling on a Christian McCaffrey going forward? Like, is he just at this point just injury prone and you're off, or are you willing to buy back in, hoping he can give you a couple more seasons?
Yeah, I think whether this is right or wrong, I think I've pretty much firmed up my stance that I'm not buying McCaffrey going forward. Personally, I am. In a startup league or in a redraft league, he's now a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick for me. I think 2 years of injury, some fluky, some not. 2 full years of battling that is enough for me to be off, and to where if I had him, I don't have him in any dynasty league, but if I did, I would be looking for the manager who still believes that the production is there. When he's on the field, it's undeniable. I think what he can do is almost unmatched. After this many games missed, I personally don't trust another 14 to 16 game season from him going forward.
Yeah. So speaking of him, the guy that I did have 1 share of him in my home league, and I traded him ultimately because it was my last contract year with him. The guy I traded him to would get 1 year out of him, back. But I traded him for this next guy, and that's Cam Akers, because he was drafted at the end of the draft. So his keeper value alone in my setup is phenomenal. He's already come back from his Achilles injury, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Where are you putting Akers in your ranks for next year?
He's going to be high for me. I mean, again, it's just unheard of that we've seen somebody come back this quickly from an injury like that. We saw these comps of people that had Achilles injuries, and they just, I remember before the season began, talking that Dante Foreman was the most successful one, and that's another player who did fine this year. But I mean, to come back this quickly,
was like 4 years after his injury, though. Yeah. By the way.
Exactly.
I'm finally good, guys.
I'm about 10 after mine, and I'm still feeling it. So let's put it that way. It's not a good injury to have, guys.
I mean, he's a few snaps in to coming back, and he doesn't look like he has the juice yet. But
Michelle's gone. Real nice Monday night, man.
Yeah, Michelle's gone next year, so it's Akers and Darrell Henderson, and I just think that they're gonna. I think that's McVay's guy, and they're gonna commit to Akers as much as they can get out of him.
Akers looked like a lightning bolt a few times on Monday night. It was like, holy crap. Like, I was shocked at how well he ran and how fast he looked. He didn't have quite the cut, in the jumps that he had. But, like, I mean, if it took him only this long to get this far, I think that's going to come very, very soon for him. But he doesn't, I don't know if he needs it. He's just fast enough at this point.
Yeah.
So
when you're right, and what little I've read and seen about Achilles injuries, it's the hesitancy to make those kind of moves that comes later. The speed looks like it's certainly there, but he just that juke ability, I think, something maybe we'll see more of next year.
Yes, and look, I've said this many times on the show. I tore my Achilles, but I'm nowhere near to the athlete or, getting the rehab that these guys are getting. But I was able to do, run in a straight line very fast, very quickly. Like, it took me, 8-9 months to get to that point, which is pretty typical. To feel comfortable, not that I couldn't do it. It was just, in your head, and like, you felt a little twinge or it's a little tight, and you just go, nope, I'm done. I'm shut down. I'm done. I'm out. Jumping, going side to side, any of that stuff, you just go, nah. He's a different beast, man. Like, I'm not. Granted, I was also trying to get married in like 4 months after I recovered from my Achilles, so I was trying not to blow it again. I was playing it super safe, but it was one of those like, this is something you don't see very often, and for a reason. But another couple guys here, actually, and we can do a pair of teammates here. We'll pair the Baltimore Ravens and the Jacksonville Jaguars running backs. We got J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. We got Travis Etienne and James Robinson. And I think everybody is more interested in Dobbins and Etienne than the latter half. But, I mean, Robinson was pretty good. But let's focus on Dobbins and Etienne here. And, just what your thoughts are for these guys moving forward as far as their dynasty values.
Yeah, I bet
they're hard to judge.
Yeah, I can imagine being Dobbins this season and watching the Le'Veon Bells and Devontae Freemans and guys like that the Latavius Murray that the Ravens were running out there, and just thinking, thank God that these are the guys that they brought in to try to replace me, knowing that your spot's going to be safe and going into next season. There's no reason to think that he can't recover from that injury and just take over in what's probably one of the top rushing offenses in the league and come back and just have that spot all to himself.
Totally agree. And I don't think there's any question about that. I think Dobbins is fairly safe. And it's funny, AJ, you traded for Akers. I have Akers on that same dynasty team that I'm talking about a few times here. I almost traded as soon as Akers went down. I almost traded for Dobbins. And then Dobbins would have gone down like a week later. So it wouldn't have mattered.
That's like the ultimate me jinx of being
no, so me is
damn it.
I have
say something about Akers.
What? I have the preseason jinx. You have the in-season jinx. I draft a guy in Scott Fish or any of these like invitational leagues in these analyst leagues in the off season. You don't want them because I have them and they're gonna get hurt. You watch. And so I especially this one best ball league. I forget what league it was. it might have been Rasbol. I drafted 3 running backs, ETN, Gus Edwards, and somebody else, and Akers. All 3 got hurt. I was like, man, I'm feeling good. Nope. I didn't have any running backs. They were toast. But do we just take ETN as a prospect sale at this point, or are we thinking it's lower than that now, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to what the sort of the conversation was in the preseason about Etienne's role versus Robinson's role. I mean, there's some
he was going to play a lot of receiver type of thing.
Yeah, that he was going to
new coaching staff now, so who knows, right?
Right. Who knows what plans they have for him? But yeah, there was a talk of he's going to be a third down back and a slot receiver, and that Robinson's going to handle the early down work. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Robinson's an Achilles injury as well? So we can't necessarily count on him to be ready for the start of the season.
I believe James Robinson was that. So
he was.
Actually, yep.
He was. Okay.
Michael's playing at The Voice from the Sky. Thanks, producer.
So
yes, it was.
If we assume that he's not ready to start the year, then I think
that he's a normal human being.
Yeah, and he's a normal human being. He's not kingmakers or anybody like that. That ATN is going to get the shot to have this all to himself. I think that's what he needs, frankly. If he's given the opportunity, again, not knowing what kind of coaching staff is going to be there, what sort of scheme they want to run. If he's given the shot, I think he's going to take it and run with it, no pun intended. And if he's got a few games all to himself, I think we're going to see him become the lead guy there.
Yeah, I feel the pain of the ETN drafting and loss. I was not able to tie up Robinson there too. I didn't own anything, draft wise on Dobbins because he was going so early, but I did have a lot of Gus Edwards, and that sucked. But throw them in there with this guy who we mentioned earlier, and it's Chris Carson. I mean, he's returning from injury again, so to speak. So, I mean, what are we even doing with this guy?
Yeah, and now they've got Rashad Penny looked like Sean Alexander out there the last 4 or 5 weeks of the year, and it's we know they want to run, but the question is what are they going to do? Yeah, with these guys, I'm checking to see now. Yeah, Penny and Collins both free agents. Man, do you look at what Penny did, going to be 26 next year, and think we got to bring him back, or
not even super old, but low mileage, man.
Surprised if they did. Because and he's been an injury concern, damn near all of his career. So well, he made himself some money that last quarter of the season. That's for sure. So we'll see if it's with Seattle or somebody else. But I don't know. I do have Carson on a couple of teams, and even when he's healthy, he gets good red zone work and has a healthy amount of touchdowns. But I don't know, just doesn't seem to be the guy that you want to be investing in Dynasty.
Yeah, not heavily enough. If I have him and nobody wants to buy him, fine. Yeah. Which is actually what happens to me in my Dynasty League myself. So I have him, nobody wants him. I'll if he's got a healthy season, fine. I'll take the near 10 touchdowns a year. I don't know if he's going to get back to that though. It just seems like it's not going to be there. But all right. So got a few more guys here I want to ask you about, and I'll just lump them all together, and you can kind of rapid fire through whoever you want. We got DeAndre Hopkins, who missed the latter part of the year, but was also kind of one of those guys who the value was sort of down on him to begin with. He wasn't really living up to expectations. We got DJ Shark, who was sort of, again, another Jacksonville guy. And then big one here, Michael Thomas. That's a guy who I think we should talk about. And then, Chris Godwin, free agency, and then Bobby Woods as well. So pick one or two of those guys, rapid fire through them, see what you think.
Yeah, let me grab Michael Thomas, only because he's the one I think certainly with the most uncertainty around him.
Right.
if, and I don't even remember the guy's name now, but if the Saints go into next year with Taysom Hill and whoever it was that played that one game.
Simeon.
Simeon. I did that last week. I couldn't remember.
No, not Simeon. The Notre Dame guy, whatever.
Ian Book.
Yeah,
Ian Book. I got on the same time as you. The play. You didn't beat me this time.
I mean, if Thomas is back, which is certainly in question, and if those guys are the quarterback, I mean, you have to downgrade everyone on that Saints offense, right? They have got so many things that they need to address next year. I don't know what you can do with Thomas, frankly, in Dynasty other than hold him and see what happens. See if he ends up on another team. See if they end up with a different quarterback. I don't know if people are buying him, selling him. I'm not buying because I don't know what's happening.
I have no idea.
I don't know if people want to sell him or not. So I think I'm just holding and seeing what happens, and then how does the market be created for a player like that once some of these things start to iron out.
Yeah, I literally don't know what to do about him. The one guy I want to mention is D Hop. I kind of think his value was down in the beginning, at least midway through the year, and my team, got injured. My Dynasty team got injured, and I was sort of just kind of trying to sell for the future. I got some really young quarterbacks on that team, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what I can get for D-Hop. Got a mid-round, first-round pick for him, and was like, I feel like that was pretty good. So yeah, that's AJ. You want to move on to this next group of guys here?
Yep, indeed. All right, so these are just our other notable players of who we're looking at for Dynasty. So we've got Tom Brady, we've got Davonte Adams, Amon Raw St. Brown, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Carter, Calvin Ridley, and Jalen Hurts. So obviously, starting with Brady, I mean, he's going to be 45. He's down a few weapons. Godwin we talked about already. AB gone. So, I mean, I think it's safe to say, are we not really drafting Brady in Dynasty? Or targeting him, I guess, because he's already owned and has been for 2 decades.
Yeah.
I think that's the tough part. It's like, if you do you want to go get him? If you're desperate for a quarterback and that's like the weak link on your team, like, do you go trade for Tom Brady?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the piece you're missing, and this is the year that you feel like you can win it, I feel confident that either Godwin or Evans will be back next year. Who knows about Gronk? And all their running backs are free agents, so the weapons are certainly a question. But I also don't have any doubt that the Buccaneers will surround him with whoever he wants.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm very curious about what you think about Davonte Adams because of there's question marks on both him and Aaron Rodgers. They just might not be on the same team, and even if Adams has a really good quarterback, is it gonna be the same value at this point? Because those two are on a different level with each other, man.
Yeah. I think with Adams, it's a floor versus ceiling conversation. I think without Rodgers, the ceiling is not nearly as high as certainly as it is with him, but I think that the floor is safe. I don't think he's going to become what Allen Robinson was this year, but I don't think you'll see the 150 in 2 games with as much frequency even if you brought in a guy who's 80% of Aaron Rodgers. So really, it's a matter of what happens with those guys, and he's going to have a safe floor, but I wouldn't count on wide receiver 1 production if it's somebody other than overall wide receiver 1 production if it's somebody other than Rodgers.
I totally get you. Yeah. And another receiver, just because and he already mentioned his name, Amon Raw. Like, this guy came on super strong this last half of the season. A lot of question marks as to can it repeat, because it was largely due, in my opinion, to injuries on that Detroit offense. You saw the running backs miss multiple games, most of the games, and even when they came back, they weren't totally as utilized as before. We saw Hawkinson not miss a ton of games, but I mean, this guy was wide receiver number 4 the last 8 weeks of the season, so you can't ignore it. Yeah. But I mean, are you all in on this guy? Like, you keeping him, or are you trying to sell high on him if you have him? Because that's the question I see everywhere.
So I've seen a lot of people that say that they're not in on St. Brown this year. If I told you that Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond are both free agents going into this year, could you name another wide receiver on the Lions roster?
DeAndre Swift.
Quintez Cephas.
I mean,
good job to play
it. even with Swift, with the healthy Hawkinson, I think that St. Brown's he's going to just be overloaded with targets next year. Yes, they're going to draft somebody. They may sign somebody. Yes, it's Jared Goff, but whether it was Jared Goff or whoever it was that filled in for him, he got target after target, and I don't see much competition going forward. Even if they do draft somebody.
I do kind of wonder, like, if somebody let me put it this way. If somebody offered you the 1.8, do you sell Amon Raw?
No.
1.5. There's a bunch of good receivers.
Yes, 1.5. You're right. This is a strong wide receiver. 1.5. Yeah. Right. Five is where I probably draw the line. Having not.
That's a pretty high price point. But I wouldn't bet that some people are going there for him because he was a monster down the stretch. So, AJ, let's finish things off here. Ask the last couple guys here.
So again, Lawrence and Hurts. We'll put the two of them together.
I want to know your feelings on Lawrence because I'm drinking to that one.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't drive too much. I swear.
Liar. I mean, what do we think of him moving forward, or can we even have a rational thought on him moving forward? Because his coach was a schlep and not there for half of the season, and I don't know. I mean, he didn't have a defense around him.
Yeah.
He was not as good as Clemson.
Didn't have a good team around him.
Yeah. I think your second question is the most relevant one. I don't think we can have a reasonable judgment on him after this year. I mean, frankly, I'm giving him a mulligan on this season. I mean, so much chaos, just awful organization all around. I don't think that the talent evaluators were this wrong about his level of talent. He could be this bad. Like 9 games in a row without a touchdown. So for me, he's getting a pass. And let's see at the next regime what happens.
Yeah.
I think the same with Hurts. Honestly, I just is after what we saw out of him down the stretch, and really a lot of his games this year were just the Eagles needing to come back big and him, getting his legs involved and whatnot. So I think Hurts also needs a better supporting cast. I think it's similar. If he's going to be the guy, or he's just not the guy.
Yeah.
So
all right. Last two here. We got Michael Carter, Calvin Ridley. Michael Carter, injured a lot of the year, but when he finally got the ball, really kind of showed what he can do. Granted, he played for the Jets, so take for what you will. And Calvin Ridley, man, kudos to him for what he did, and to get himself right, and hopefully he comes back next year. If he does, and there's a lot of talk that he gets traded, what do you do with him if you roster him in Dynasty? And then those are the two guys that we can do to finish up here.
Yeah, I sort of see Calvin Ridley in the same sort of the same way that I see Michael Thomas. So many more questions than answers at this point, with the number one question being, will he play next year? Right? I think all indications point to the fact that Michael Thomas wants to play. I think we're hearing rumors now that Ridley wants to come back, but that it doesn't want to come back with the Falcons. So just for me, too many questions to be able to, to put a really firm judgment on that. Michael Carter, the Jets, I think the last few weeks of the season were surprisingly adequate offense.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Not jet-like, yeah.
Zack Wilson just went, just said, forget it. I'm just going to play my style of ball and throw it downfield and run it.
That's what he did in the preseason. Why everybody was kind of like, hey, this guy might actually be decent. And then he just went into this mold of I got to be an NFL guy. And
they've got the makings of an offense there, at least the skill positions with Wilson, Carter, Davis, and Elijah Moore. So
I love Moore. He was another guy I wanted to ask you about, but I passed on him just because time.
That's a semi-competent offense. Assuming everybody sort of takes this next step forward with that many rookies making up the core.
Yeah.
I think I'm buying in. Looks like the price is probably right on Michael Carter.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I drafted Carter in the early second round of my rookie draft this past year in my Dynasty League. You ain't getting him, guys. I love me some Michael Carter. Again, maybe I just watch way too much ACC football, but dude, if it weren't for Javonte Williams, we'd be talking about Michael Carter as a Javonte Williams type almost. Yeah. Like he's that good. I really do believe it. Yeah. All right, so to finish up here, man, you are going to be writing an article for Fantasy Six Pack, the Dynasty Football Players to Stash. Give us a quick preview for a couple of the guys that you want to highlight.
Yeah, the piece should have probably about 6 guys in there that we might consider sort of off the radar a little bit. These guys that we've talked about today really are sort of firmly planted in the ADP of Dynasty rankings. But some of these guys I think that I'll try to touch on really may fall outside of that list or may not be the ones you immediately think of. I think one guy I wanted to touch on to start would be somebody like Ino Benjamin, right? So you look at the Cardinals, their offense is, the entire offense is free agent. Basically, they're bringing back Ino and they're bringing back Hopkins and Rondale Moore, Connor, Edmonds, Ertz, Kirk, Green, all free agents. So what does their offense even look like next year? We certainly still saw this year where the Cardinals are committed to a dual running back approach. Benjamin, in the time that he had available as a backup role when either Connor or Edmonds was out, showed some real juice. So I think that's a guy just to sort of put on your radar that the Cardinals are not going to give the ball to one guy 100% of the time. So he's someone I think that's earned a little bit of their trust. Again, what does the offense look like? Who do they re-sign? Who do they not? I think remains to be seen, but I think the Cardinals rushed at the 12th highest rate in the league, and certainly are going to be willing to give Benjamin that shot, assuming there's not guys stacked on top of him going into next year. So that's one. And another guy I think you'll see on there is Josh Palmer, right? So Michael Williams, Jalen Guyton.
Like it.
Won't be, well, at least are free agents. We don't know what their situation will be with the Chargers going forward. Chargers pass at the 4th highest rate in the league. Herbert is a superstar on the rise. Palmer in the last 5 games of the Chargers season had at least 5 targets in 4 of those, and he really sort of developed their trust when Williams or Allen had to sit out. So he's a guy, depending on if they try to fill those Williams and Guyton roles, I think he can step up in Williams' shoes, assuming that Allen stays in the slot. Eckler gets the running back work, so that could be the sort of the duo for the Chargers there, Allen and Palmer going forward.
I like those two a ton, man. I like that a lot, and which is why I asked you to write this article, man. So it's been a big one for the site for the last couple of years. Hope it is going to be again. Probably coming out, I'm thinking next week?
Next 2 or 3 days,
Yep, cool deal, man. So, yeah. But that's it for the show, man. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and what else you got going on besides stuff for Fantasy Six Pack, obviously.
Yeah, at Kirksey Sports on Twitter. Just really plugging into Dynasty content for football folks that really hear with Fantasy Six Pack on that aspect of things. And then I'll really be, I think, over the next few months doing quite a bit of off season, getting prepped for MLB, including for Fantasy Six Pack. So look for that in the month to come.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and I know I asked you late notice yesterday, so appreciate the quick turnaround for you, and it was a great show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Cheers.
Oh, all right. Sorry, Mike. I suck. I'm just used to clicking the in-out buttons. All right.
We have a producer for this purpose.
Gotta remember that. Anyway,
write a note. Stick it on your laptop.
Sticky note sticking over your face would be good.
Right over here.
Yeah.
Right here. Right under your camera.
I'm forgetful. I understand.
See, LaPlante's nicer about it than you, AJ, man. You're just a jerk. Anyway, happy birthday.
Thanks.
Cheers. Let's drink to that.
Yes, happy birthday, AJ.
Yes, I am now drinking a blizzard of hops.
All right, more
summoning the
stuff.
snow gods.
Why are you summoning? I want my kids to actually go to school tomorrow. If it's a 2-hour delay, I'd be much, much happier.
No, you had them away today for the first time in a long time. So
in 4.5 weeks,
yeah,
I need them gone again. No,
it's time for them to come back home
and torment me. Jesus, you are awful. All right, man.
That would be such a great birthday present. Man.
I know your kids don't go to school like that, but mine do. Bye.
I have one that goes to school, sort of.
All right. Anyway, that's it for the show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week, we should be bringing on a guy who, from Rise in Draft, Ryan Roberts. And he's a draft scout, also writes for SI and some other places as well. And we're going to get into some of these draft prospects again, more Dynasty football talk. So it's kind of the theme we're going with till the end of the month, and then we'll be jumping into fantasy baseball. So looking forward to doing that. AJ and I already planned out a bunch of the shows. We got a bunch of great guests. I'll be putting those out on Twitter here once I lock up the very, very last one. And again, hit up that like button. I think that one's over here. And then hit the subscribe button. That one's way over here. I can't hit it. AJ, you got it. You got to hit that one over there.
The what?
It's over on that would be your left. Your left down. Subscribe buttons are on. You're a jerk. All right, ignore us. So anyway, good night, guys.
Here.
And
somewhere.
Yeah, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, yeah, actually pretty much right there. If you're listening to the show still, hit up those like buttons, those subscribe buttons, those follow buttons. Leave us those reviews. We appreciate it immensely. Peace out, guys.